Caitlin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I'm so excited to talk to you. You have been such a delight in our community, but also someone who takes so much action, and it's been really fun to watch your journey. So I'm excited to hear a little bit about your backstory. Actually, I don't know that much about your backstory, although we did go to the same college.
We did. That was a fun fact I learned after joining your program.
I know. I love anyone who went to Wesleyan. If you went to Wesleyan, call me right now, guys, audience. So let's start from the beginning, Caitlin. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into this space.
I've been working as a designer since 1999, back in the days of Flash animation and Work Express. And I had a couple of jobs with small businesses, and during the dot-com craziness in the early 2000s, left just to rest and ended up getting a bunch of branding jobs and sort of fell into my business. It wasn't very intentional, which meant that it took a long time to really be serious about it. And I messed around for a long time without a lot of intention and, just calling myself a freelancer. And it took me maybe even a decade to get to the point where I called myself a business and I got a business license, got a business checking account. I mean, it took a really long time to do all those things. But I think that the reason I jumped right into your program and took action immediately is because I was ready. It's been 20 years off and on floundering and had tried doing things the way that agencies usually do them, and it just wasn't working for me. And I'd done one-off projects, I'd done retainers, I'd done all the different things that branding people tend to do, and none of it was working. And so when I saw your method, it really resonated, and I was ready to jump right in.
That's why you hit the ground running when you came in.
Yes.
What were the worst parts about how it was working before? Like, what were the biggest challenges?
So many. Free proposals were horrible. Last year was the worst year of my business. And I sent out so many proposals, spent so much time on all of them, and hardly got any work last year. The other thing that really resonated when I was listening to your podcast is the whole idea of the intensive. I had a real problem with scope creep over the year with clients, especially during COVID. I had projects that should have been done in a few months. It took over a year. And there was so much time waiting for things, unanswered emails, following up. And every time, weeks would pass and then you have to go back through all your emails and think, oh my gosh, where are we? What are we doing? And so the idea of doing a focused, intense process really spoke to me. And I think that was what was probably most exciting about joining your program. And when I joined, I happened to have a few branding projects lined up. So I was able to practice the intensives model right away. And once I did the first one, I just thought, this is worth the price of admission right here, just to learn this model. It was interesting to segue a little bit into something else, but it was interesting at the retreat to learn that some people hadn't tried the intensives yet. And I just was saying to everyone, you have to do it because that's where this is the magic. This is the gold right here.
I know you did it so soon. Now I understand why. You had people in the wings. What was that first intensive like? Were you nervous?
I was really scared. It was a Brandon website for a woman I knew. She wasn't a friend. She was a friend of a friend, but she was friendly enough that I felt comfortable saying to her, I'm learning a new process. I'm not sure how this is going to go. I think it's going to be great, but we're just going to try this and see. And I think I built in 4 days, maybe. I didn't jump right into a 2 day. I think I built in 4 days, but it was done at the end of the second day, maybe even before the end of the second day. It went so fast and it was so easy. And she approved everything in that first hour on the spot. And then it was just minor tweaks over a couple days.
Amazing. Well, when that first one goes that well, you're like, I'm sold.
Exactly. And so the next one was just a couple weeks later, and that one I did 2 days, and then it's been 2 days ever since.
Oh my gosh. And what do you attribute to? That's a dramatic shift from projects that went on for a year. Like, what mindset shifts did you have to make that shift?
I think a huge mindset shift I had to make was I think when I was coming up, there was this whole idea that the client was always right. And we'd always bend over backwards to do whatever the client wanted. And your whole thing about being the expert really spoke to me. And I realized that also being on the client side, I've worked with photographers, and it makes such a big difference when a photographer comes in and says, this is what we're going to do. I've got it in control. I'm going to take this off your plate for you, and don't worry, I've got it. I much prefer that to a photographer coming in and being like, what do you want? What do you think of this? Being sort of wishy-washy. So I think being on the client end, and also, for remodeling projects, I've been on the client end for other things, and I understand that I feel, or also as a parent, it's like how children feel more comfortable when they know that you have things under control. Or dogs, it's for everything. All mammals maybe, like someone to be to know who's in control and who's the expert. And so I think being on that end made it easier for me to say, oh, this is the right way to be. And I really notice that with my clients. And when I come in and I speak with authority, it just goes much more smoothly. Also, of course, your whole idea of the lead product. So much of the thinking has already been done and the strategy has already been done before we get to the intensive. So there aren't really any surprises by the time we get to the visuals.
It's so funny that you say that about parenting. I feel like whenever I'm listening to parenting podcasts, I'm like, oh, I could just redo this episode. But for clients, I'm like, Dr. Becky would be a great branding agency.
Yes, you come in with structure and authority, and kids like that.
And they
it's
need
the same with your clients. Yeah,
it's the same with
clients
us.
like, yes, all of us like that. It feels good. It makes you feel safe when you know that someone's got it under control.
Right, and you don't want to pay people to then have to direct them. You want to pay
Right.
them for them to direct you because they know
Right.
better.
Right. And so I think what you've taught me is a huge part of what I'm selling is ease. So I'm taking all of those tricky things off of the client's plate and saying, I've got you. I'm going to take care of this. You don't have to do anything but show up for a few meetings over these 2 days and it's going to be great. And they really love that.
Well, I think it's also working really well because you're saying it really confidently because you believe it. I mean, that's
I
a
do.
big piece of it too. It's really, I think that people are scared to do it because at first, it's that first couple where you're not quite, oh, how could this possibly be? And so if you're not confident about it, it's going to be harder for people to sign on because what are they signing on for?
Right. I mean, you're saying I jumped in quickly, but it took floundering for 20 years
to finally be ready.
And it took a really bad year financially.
Yeah.
And I was thinking I had a retainer end at the last spring. And if I had seen your ad for your program when that retainer ended, I wouldn't have been ready and I wouldn't have thought I needed it. And when that retainer ended, I wasn't nervous because I've always just gotten a new one. And then for the first time, I didn't just get a new retainer. And so I needed to have a little bit of pain, I think, to really be ready to throw it all away and start from scratch. So I think it all sort of worked out the way it was supposed to.
That's so interesting. Yeah, because that's actually something I talk about is the retainer as being like a false sense of security, yes. Right? Because, yeah, you don't really take the action because, oh, well, I've got this retainer, so it's okay. And then what happens when it's lost? Well, then you might not feel like, oh, I can't invest in myself now or I can't make a change now because I don't have the income coming in. And what a catch-22 that is.
Right. Well, the irony, I was just talking to someone about this, that when that retainer ended, I wasn't in as much financial pain as I was 7 months later when I joined your program, and I had so much less money, but I also somehow felt like I had less to lose. So even though I just lost 7 months of income, right. I also felt like, oh, I can't do that for another 7 months. And so I was so much more ready to make the investment after a few months of pain.
That makes sense. I can relate to that for sure. Tell me a little bit about, because you said originally I asked you what big challenges you had and you were like, well, the free proposals and they didn't close. What was the shift in how did you feel when you first started doing these lead products?
It was nerve-wracking because no one does it that way. And it was hard to say with confidence, I have this process and the first step is this hour-and-a-half interview and a brief and you have to pay for it. And it was scary the first few times. But it's interesting that only people who have balked have been people who are in marketing or branding already. So I've had 2 people who came to me who were sort of in the branding marketing space. And when I told them my process, they said, oh, well, I already know my brand. I don't need to do that. And I was like, well, that's great. It's going to make it easier. And they're like, no, I don't want to do it. But I can't even count the number of people that I've sold on the lead product since then. It's been a breeze. I don't think it just makes sense to people. And the idea of the lead product, that when the payment for that goes to the payment for the total package, if they're planning to work with me, there's no sunk cost there. So I think it's been an easy sell. And I think it does just make sense to people that this is how you get to the root of what you need to do for the brand. I can't believe I ever did it without this before. I mean, the other big difference is once I started a project, I used to have an intake questionnaire that was a Google Doc or over email. And it was so onerous, people to have to fill that out on their own. And it would take them forever. And that was part of what often took so long is I had to keep reminding them, did you do the doc? Did you, fill out the questionnaire? And so I think doing it in a video interview also makes a lot of sense where A, it's more conversational, but B, it's time set aside. We're going to do it together. I'm going to hold your hand through the whole thing. And it doesn't feel as onerous, I think, for the client.
And then you don't have to wait for them, which is the worst thing ever, having to wait for clients to get back to you.
Yeah.
That's so interesting that the branding and marketing people said no, because, I mean, how many times have I heard from branding and marketing people, shoemaker's son have no shoes. It's so hard to do it for yourself, right? So the idea, oh no, I have that completely buttoned up. Like, really?
Yes. Yes. I did get one marketing person. A couple weeks ago, I finished a brand for a fractional CMO, and she did buy in and love the whole thing. But yeah.
Awesome. Amazing. Okay, so tell me a little bit about what's changed since. So it sounds like you've done tons of LPs. You've done quite a few intensives at this point. How are you feeling? How did this change how you feel about your business?
It feels exciting. I feel like I have control over it. I think the other really big change is the idea of outreach. I did used to, well, gosh, there's so many things. I used to just let business come to me, whatever came to me, I would pretty much do. So I think the two big changes since working with you was niching. So being really clear that now I'm only going to work with women-owned service businesses. And once I got really clear about that, it made outreach so much easier because it's just easier to say, this is what I do, this is the type of client I'm looking for, and then for my circle to think of people and send people my way. Before I used to do the thing, I can design anything for anyone, and no one knew what to do with me and no one knew how to refer me. So it's made it easier for me to do outreach because I didn't really do really any outreach at all. And then the outreach is more fruitful because people understand what I do. I'm very clearly saying I'm doing branding and websites. People understand what that means. And then for women entrepreneurs. And so it just made it much easier to send people my way. So I started going hard on outreach at the end of last year, and I've been booked out 2 months in advance since January, basically. But it's interesting. Now it's the summer, and I'm going to Europe in July, and I'm booked out till I leave, but I don't have anything lined up for August. So I just sent some 9-word emails yesterday.
Amazing job.
Trying to get ahead into August and September, and try to get those slots filled.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, the beauty of this is you can go to Europe and you can book something while you're there.
Yes. Well, it's true. It's true. The whole thing with the intensives also is how easy it is to manage your schedule. And, I was just in New York for the retreat and my reunion. And it was so great that I was able to schedule an intensive to end right before I left. And then I gave myself 3 weeks before my next intensive after coming back. So I'd have, a week and a half to do the work for the intensive, but also gave myself a little bit of buffer when I got back because I knew I'd be exhausted. It's been really great to already put into practice your idea of scheduling for freedom.
Yes, and you are doing it so beautifully. Because sometimes people, even though that's available to them, they still schedule it tight because there's this scarcity feeling.
Yeah.
And I love.
Well, and I did that in the beginning.
Oh yeah,
I did that when I first started. So when all the clients started rolling in January, I sort of panicked and I didn't want to make anyone wait, and so I scheduled things too quickly or spaced too tightly together, and it was terrible. I was exhausted. And I got it done, and the clients were still happy, and I think the process was still great, so it all worked out. But I was really exhausted, so I learned to do that better and plan out better.
You're a quick study because only a couple months later you realized, give myself time and more time. And have you booked? You said booked out 2 months in advance. Have you booked anybody into the future and had them say, I don't want to wait?
No, it hasn't been a problem at all. I think because they know what day it's going to be done. It doesn't matter that it's a couple months out, and probably in the old process, it would have taken longer than a couple months anyway. So no, I haven't had anyone complain about it. So I was really nervous at the beginning about saying, I'm not booking until, 2 months out, and I haven't gotten any pushback at all. It's been fine.
It's amazing the stories we tell ourselves with absolutely no data.
I know. Well, I'm a pleaser, so it was a little bit hard in the beginning to get around that. But I also had a good example where, again, as a client, where my sister and I were trying to get a tattoo over Thanksgiving, and we want to do it together, and we had a specific day. We reached out to a bunch of tattoo artists, and the ones we first reached out to who we really liked were really expensive, and they were booked out 6 months in advance. And then we found someone who was cheaper and was available, and we both were thinking, oh gosh, is she not going to be good? Are we going to make a huge mistake going with this person who's available now and who's not as much money? And so I think those sorts of experiences as a client are good reminders.
Absolutely. And it's good. I mean, we have these experiences in everyday life, but we don't necessarily translate them into our own businesses. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're a client and you expect X, Y, and Z, but then you become the business owner, and for some reason, all of that learning goes out the window.
Yeah.
You think, oh no, they want me to be available all the time, right now, as cheap as possible.
Right.
Ooh.
It's
Yeah, not the clients.
It's crazy. Right.
I love it. We have a lot of actually people in our community that listen to this podcast, but we have a lot of people who are not in our community yet. And I think that some of the things that people get inside mastery are not necessarily the things that they came for. And I was just curious if there's anything that once you came inside the community, you were like, oh, wow, like I didn't think we were going to do that, or I didn't realize we were going to learn about that, or I didn't realize that was going to be here, and that's really valuable. Not to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious.
No, 100%. I have an easy answer for that. The community. I've been working on my own for 20 years, and I like working on my own. And I didn't like working in office. I didn't like having coworkers. So I had this whole narrative that I didn't need a community. And it wasn't something that I was looking for. And the community within No BS has been incredible. The way that we can communicate constantly on the online platform, but also with the group coaching and the pods. And I've set up a lot of one-on-one Zoom meetings with people just to get to know them better. And, all being together at the retreat, it's so supportive. I've learned so much. The kindness and generosity of everyone has been incredible. When I've had a couple technical questions, and people who I haven't met yet have reached out with and really spent a lot of time putting together thoughtful answers. And it's been really amazing to get to know this amazing group of people and to have other people in my industry to talk to and bounce questions off of has really been invaluable. And it was not on my radar. And I don't know if I even was paying attention when I was told it was part of your program. And it's been such a really great surprise how valuable it's been.
I'm so happy to hear that. I had a coach once that said, people never join for the community, but that ends up being one of the most valuable things. Because how amazing is it to have colleagues who are also going through the same stuff? Like, we're all in our own little worlds as business owners. I don't know about you, but none of my friends that I grew up with are entrepreneurs. They have no idea what I'm talking about. I can echo that just in my experience. And having our community is also amazing for me. And by the way, I agree. Like, we have an extra special group of people. I feel like we attract really cool people. The retreat was so fun.
Oh my gosh. It was amazing. I loved it so much. I was really happy to make that happen. Yeah. And it was surprisingly moving. It was just so emotional because, we all got so vulnerable. I think we had to because we were, working on big ideas and all the vision stuff and all that mindset stuff that it can be hard and it can also feel cheesy, but it all, just all came together in such a wonderful way at the retreat. And I really loved it.
I'm so glad. I wish we could do them more than once a year, but even just getting together once a year in person, I think it's the kind of, we do that work online, but doing it in person, you can't replicate that online, being in human space with each other. Yeah, super magical and just so fun to meet all of you guys in person. And at this point, we've had 3 retreats. And some of the people who were at the last retreat had been at all 3 of them. So watching their growth has been really interesting too, just because, it's like a timestamp and being like, wow, at the last time you were here, you were in a completely different space. You're a completely different level of person in terms of a business owner.
Yeah, I can imagine because even in the 6 months I've been in the program, seeing people's growth has been really exciting.
So inspiring.
It really is.
Well, Caitlin, I am just so honored to be a part of your journey and to have you in here. You are such a delight and also so supportive and helpful to everybody else too, which we always love because, like you just said, the community is such a big piece of this, even though it's not really what we sell. It's we know that people need it and we know that it's lonely in the entrepreneurial journey. So I'm just so grateful that you're a part of this. You're a part of our world. Can you tell everybody where they can find you online?
So I'm at liquidformdesign.com. I bought that domain 20 years ago when I didn't understand that long domains were annoying, but that's what it is. It is liquidformdesign.com. If you're buying a domain, pick a shorter one.
Well, at least it doesn't have a dash.
It doesn't have a dash.
And
it doesn't have a dash.
.com.
It's a .com, yes. But there were I kicked myself because there were so many domains available back then. Now you can't get any.
It could have been best branding.
Oh my God, I could have picked anything and I picked a really long one. Anyway, liquidformdesign.com.
Beautiful. Everybody connect with Caitlin. Actually, you have, by the way, I love everybody in our community, but your work is particularly great. So you should go check out Caitlin's website just to see some banger case studies because your work is just amazing. And every time you post it online, I remember one of them. I was like, wow, that's really cool. Really amazing job. And also it's kind of fun, again, just for our listeners who maybe I think a lot of our listeners think that when we say intensives and, oh, we're doing it in a few days, they're like, oh, it's going to be whatever, like templatey, like cheap, like whatever. And obviously I know that that's so far from the truth, and we do like incredibly thoughtful and custom and strategic design. But your designs are like a great example of that, because you just told us how you've been doing them in like a couple of days, and some of your work that I've seen is just really amazing. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank
Yeah.
you. Well, also, it's also been interesting. I think we talked about this at some point, but I've always tracked my hours, and my hours are similar. I'm a little faster now, and now I am writing copy as well. But my projects used to always take about 40 hours, and they're still taking about 40 hours, but now, or 30 to 40, but now I'm doing it in 2 weeks instead of months and months. So it's interesting that it is a similar amount of work, I guess, but it's compressed and it's more efficient.
Yeah. And when you say you tracked your hours, when they were over time, were you tracking the hours that you were spending emailing with people and thinking about where are they and chasing them and all of those
Not
things?
necessarily. It's true. Yeah, there are probably a lot of extra hours that I didn't track when I was going back through old emails and trying to remember, what are we doing again? What's happening?
I mean, for
Yeah.
me, every time I would have to go from project to different project, it's like, wait, it takes me a little while to get into, wait, what was this, remembering it, all of that, and certainly over time. And I just found that just being completely immersed in it makes it so much more efficient, just like energetically, it's so much more fun to do.
Yes, I agree, 100%. Yeah. Well, and Pia, I want
Yeah.
to thank you for sharing your model with me, with our whole community, because it sort of blows my mind how many of us were doing it a stupid way without questioning it for forever. And your way just makes so much. I mean, it was just wild when I was listening to your podcast. It resonated immediately. I got it immediately. I was like, this makes sense. My boyfriend thought I was crazy to sign up for your program. I don't think I've told you this, but he thought I was insane. He was like, she thought it was a scam and like all sounded too good to be true. And I was like, no, listen, I've been listening to the podcast. She makes sense. And I know because I've been doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And it clicked immediately for me. I was immediately like, take all my money. You can have all my money. I'll do whatever you say. And it totally paid off.
That's what we're going for, Caitlin. Well, I'm so happy to hear that. That's really awesome. And yeah, I feel like it's a better way too, or else I wouldn't be trying to tell everybody about it. So
No, it's the best.
You're a perfect example of what is possible if you just kind of do it. I mean, that's the thing. People have to still do it, but we can give you exactly how to do it, and it can be pretty quick if you just show up and take action.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. It's been really great.
Thank you so, so much for coming on this podcast and sharing your story and sharing your experience, Caitlin. You're the best, and I can't wait to see where you go next with this, because we've got a whole authority world for you to dominate.
Yes, I have not tried that yet. Thank you. Thank you so much, Pia.
I think it's like, I know, I need to like put a fire under your butt, because I think I'm excited to see where you go with that.
I talked about it with a bunch of people at the retreat.
You did?
It's on my radar. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see.
Well, let this be the little kick in the butt that you need to.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.